Don't defend her. How old were you when she started meaning more to you?
That's not how it happened.
Then explain it to me.
Stop.
No, you stop. You don't get to call this love and expect me to smile.
I never asked for your approval. I chose her.
Because she taught you to. If loving him makes me a villain, then so be it. Love doesn't need patience like that. Love doesn't wait for childhood to end.
I want to be with her.
No one ever questioned why Miriam Caldwell took the boy in. When Daniel arrived at her door, he was 11 years old, thin as a shadow, his eyes carrying the kind of quiet that came from too much listening and not enough speaking. His father had died, suddenly. His mother, overwhelmed, grieving, and spiraling, had made the hardest decision of her life and asked Miriam, her former schoolteacher and trusted friend, to care for him for a while. That, while stretched into years, Miriam was 43 then, widowed, disciplined, the sort of woman who folded towels into perfect thirds and believed silence could be kinder than words. She lived alone in a narrow house at the edge of town, with a garden that bloomed despite neglect and a clock that ticked too loudly at night. From the beginning, she treated Daniel like a son. She woke him for school, packed his lunches, helped with homework, attended parent-teacher meetings, and sat in the front row at every school event, clapping louder than anyone else. When he had nightmares, she sat outside his room until his breathing slowed. When he scraped his knee, she cleaned the wound without flinching. When he cried for his mother, Miriam never spoke badly of her. She simply said, "She loves you, even from afar." And Daniel believed her. As the years passed, the house changed. The walls filled with photos. Daniel at 12, 13, 14, smiling awkwardly, growing taller, his shoulders widening, his voice deepening. Miriam noticed these changes the way one notices seasons, quietly without comment, marking time without touching it. She never crossed a line, but time has a way of moving lines without asking permission. Daniel left for university at 18. The house felt hollow without him. Miriam told herself the ache was normal, that parents feel this way, that silence after years of shared routines could feel like grief. She packed his room carefully, left his bed untouched, dusted the shelves but didn't move the books. She missed him, but in the way a mother misses a child. Or so she told herself. For years past, Daniel returned at 22, taller, broader, sharper. His voice carried confidence now. His eyes no longer searched rooms for approval. He hugged Miriam at the door, longer than necessary, then stepped back as if startled by his own familiarity. Something shifted in that moment. Not desire, not yet. Awareness. They noticed each other. The way Daniel stood differently, the way Miriam's hair had silvered at the temples, the way their conversations lasted longer, drifted deeper, circled topics they never named. They spoke late into the night about books, regrets, the future. Daniel talked about his loneliness at university. Miriam spoke about the quiet that followed him leaving. They laughed more, held eye contact longer. Still, nothing happened. Both of them knew the weight of what stood between them. Not law, not blood, but memory. She had raised him. He had called her home. And that made everything dangerous. The realization came quietly. Daniel noticed it first. One evening, Miriam stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, steam curling around her as she stirred a pot. She turned to him, smiled, and for reasons he couldn't explain, his chest tightened, not with comfort, but with longing. It frightened him. He left the room without explanation, heart racing, ashamed of thoughts he hadn't invited. Miriam noticed her own truth days later. She caught herself waiting for Daniel's footsteps, listening for his voice, feeling a warmth at his presence that went beyond familiarity. When she imagined his future, his wife, his life elsewhere, something sharp twisted inside her. She wept alone that night because she knew, and knowing felt like betrayal. They avoided each other for weeks, then months, until one evening during a power outage, sitting across from each other in candlelight, Daniel finally spoke. "This feels wrong," he said quietly. Miriam didn't ask what he meant. "Yes," she replied. "It does." They said nothing more, but the silence between them was louder than confession. Nothing happened until Daniel turned 25. By then, he had moved out, built a life, worked, dated, lived independently. The distance should have ended it. Instead, it clarified everything. They met for coffee one afternoon. Neutral ground, safe distance. And there, with strangers passing by, Daniel said what they had both avoided. "I don't feel like your child anymore." Miriam closed her eyes. "And I don't feel like your mother," she whispered. That was the moment. Not passion, not impulse. Decision. They walked away from that table, knowing the world would never understand, but also knowing they could no longer lie to themselves. They waited. Another year passed before they became a couple. Carefully, quietly, respectfully. No rushing, no hiding from truth, only from judgment. Daniel proposed on a winter evening. No audience, no celebration, just honesty. Miriam said yes through tears. They didn't announce it right away, but secrets decay. And eventually, Daniel told his biological mother. She did not scream. She did not cry. She simply stared at him and said, "I trusted her." That sentence shattered everything. She accused Miriam of manipulation, of theft, of grooming, of betrayal. No explanation mattered. To her, time rewrote itself cruelly. And in the court of public opinion, nuance has no defense. Friends vanished. Whispers followed. Invitations stopped coming. Miriam offered to leave. Daniel refused. For the first time in his life, he chose her, not out of rebellion, but clarity. The wedding was small, painfully small, but it was honest. Miriam walked down the aisle knowing she had lost her reputation, her relationships, and the comfort of being understood. Daniel stood beside her, knowing he might never fully repair the bond with his mother. Love did not save them. It changed them. They learned that some loves are not forbidden by law, but by memory, by expectation, by the stories people refuse to update. And still, they chose each other. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. Years later, Daniel would say this: "Love isn't always about beginnings. Sometimes it's about surviving the past long enough to choose the future." And Miriam would smile quietly, still aware of the cost, still carrying the weight, but finally at peace with the truth they had once tried so hard to hide. Because the most thrilling love stories are not about passion. They are about choice. Years after the wedding, people would still argue about when it truly began. Daniel said it began when he was grown. Miriam said the same. But memory is not a witness you can cross-examine. The marriage was quiet, too quiet. There were no dramatic fights, no public scenes, just long pauses, glances held too long, silences that felt rehearsed. Daniel noticed that Miriam still folded his clothes the same way she had when he was a boy, still corrected his posture, still reminded him to eat slowly, still watched him sleep sometimes. "You don't have to take care of me like that," he said once, gently. She smiled. Old habits. But something in her eyes unsettled him. Daniel began to dream. In the dreams, he was small again, sitting at the kitchen table, Miriam standing over him, brushing his hair, telling him stories about loyalty and gratitude, about how the world abandons boys like him, about how only one kind of love stays. He woke sweating, heart pounding. The dreams felt too detailed, too real. It happened by accident. Miriam was hospitalized briefly. Nothing serious. Daniel returned to the old house to collect paperwork. He hadn't been there in years. In the attic, behind boxes of school trophies and faded photos, he found a locked trunk. He didn't know why he opened it. Inside were journals, dozens of them, meticulously dated. The first entries were harmless observations, schedules, concerns about his grades. The tone of a guardian. Then the language shifted, subtle at first. Daniel laughed today. I like when he laughs. It makes the house feel alive. Later, he's changing. I must be careful not to show how much I notice. Then, I feel guilty for hoping he never leaves. And finally, if I raise him well, he will choose me. Not because he has to, but because I am home. Daniel's hands trembled. The dates were clear. Some entries were written when he was 16, 17. The words were not sexual, but they were possessive, strategic, waiting. He found another folder beneath the journals, letters never sent, drafts, practice conversations, imagined confessions that always ended the same way. He understands. He forgives. He chooses me. Daniel realized something then that made him physically ill. She had never crossed a line. She had never needed to. She had shaped the room. The silence, the dependence, the idea of safety. She had waited for legality to catch up with desire. The choice he thought was his may have been prepared for him long before he knew what choice was. When Miriam came home, Daniel confronted her. She didn't deny the journals. She didn't apologize. She looked tired. You were never trapped, she said calmly. You could have left. But you made me believe you were the only place I belonged, he said. She tilted her head. Was I wrong? That was when Daniel understood the most terrifying part. She truly believed this was love. Pure, patient, earned. I waited, she said softly. I did everything right. Daniel left that night. No shouting, no violence, just silence. Months passed. Miriam told people he needed space, that love requires patience. Daniel never returned. Years later, when Miriam died, Daniel attended the funeral but stood at the back. No one recognized him. Afterward, he returned to the house one last time. He burned the journals, not to protect her, but to protect himself. Because the darkest truth wasn't that she loved him too early. It was that by the time he was old enough to choose, he wasn't sure the choice had ever been his at all.